She was only 7 years old, but her voice made the whole courtroom shake. "He did it," she shouted, her finger firmly pointed at the most respected man in the room. The businessman's eyes went wide, and no one else could pretend they didn't see it. At that moment, the fall of a lie that seemed impossible to topple began. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel, don't forget to like this video, and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The silence of the Boston courtroom shattered as a child's voice, sweet and trembling, rose above the hushed murmurs. 7-year-old Emma Taylor sat on a bench too tall for her feet to touch the ground, her blonde pigtails bobbing as she shifted nervously. With wide eyes and an extended finger, she pointed at a man in a dark suit, her words echoing through the room with the force of thunder. "Mommy, it was him." For several moments, no one moved. Even time seemed to stop. The man, Dr. Richard Harmon, founder of the prestigious Luminary Learning Center and a respected educational entrepreneur, known for his impeccable appearance and generous donations to children's causes, showed no reaction. But his eyes betrayed what his mouth concealed, a slight tremor, as if something locked away for years had escaped. This hearing was supposed to be just another custody dispute, a case between Sarah Taylor, a hard-working single mother, and her ex-husband Jake, a typically absent father who had suddenly developed an interest in their daughter's custody shortly after Sarah had begun asking questions at work. But that simple phrase changed everything. The courtroom plunged into a silence that wasn't just shock, it was the beginning of the end of a carefully constructed lie. Sarah was an ordinary woman, a former teacher who had transitioned to an administrative assistant position at the Luminary Learning Center in Boston's affluent Beacon Hill neighborhood. The center offered a revolutionary educational model focused on the emotional development of gifted children. She had been grateful for the job. It paid well and allowed her to enroll Emma in the prestigious program at a significant discount. Sarah never suspected anything until the day Emma began having constant nightmares. Then came the drawings. On notebook pages, Emma depicted strange symbols, confusing words, and people Sarah recognized, including Dr. Harmon, who now stood before them in court. The discovery was jarring. The educational program, presented as nurturing and innovative, applied questionable practices with children who showed uncommon abilities, above-average memory, emotional sensitivity, and strong obedience. They were observed, tested, and pushed to their limits under the guise of pedagogical activities. When Sarah tried to question what she had discovered, she was fired. When she sought justice, she was ignored. When she turned to the press, she was ridiculed. But she never gave up. Her love for Emma drove her forward, even without knowing how to proceed, until she crossed paths with Olivia Reed, a discredited journalist who had faced giants before. Together, they began connecting the dots. There was something bigger at play, something that used children as pieces in a silent game, a game of power, influence, and control. "Your Honor," Sarah's attorney, Marcus Winters, addressed Judge Patricia Coleman, "My client has substantial evidence that Dr. Harmon's educational methods have caused significant psychological distress to her daughter and potentially other children at the Luminary Learning Center." The judge's stern expression remained unchanged. "Mr. Winters, we're here to determine custody arrangements between Ms. Taylor and Mr. Taylor, not to put Dr. Harmon's educational philosophies on trial." "With all due respect," Marcus continued, "the two issues are inextricably linked. Mr. Taylor began seeking custody only after Dr. Harmon's intervention, and we believe—" "Objection," Jake Taylor's attorney stood sharply. "These accusations are unfounded and irrelevant to the custody hearing." Sarah watched as her ex-husband shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Jake had barely seen Emma in the past 3 years, sending occasional birthday cards and showing up for Christmas every other year. His sudden interest in custody had come exactly 2 weeks after Sarah had started asking questions about Emma's strange behavior and the center's practices. Judge Coleman sighed. "Sustained. Mr. Winters, please confine your arguments to the matter at hand." That's when Emma had spoken up, her small voice cutting through the legal jargon like a knife. The courtroom fell silent again, all eyes turning to the small girl, who now clutched her mother's hand. Sarah knew she couldn't do this alone, and she knew that speaking the truth wasn't enough. She needed proof. That's when Emma started drawing more. Scenes, places, phrases that Sarah knew the girl could never have invented. Some memories were hidden, but emerged in the delicate strokes of colored pencils, scenes that confirmed the child had gone through something real and serious. Over time, small victories emerged. A former employee of the foundation, remorseful, handed over confidential documents. Shortly after, he suffered an accident at home, the kind of coincidence that no one can prove, but that leaves a knot in your stomach. Later, Sarah herself was accused of forging evidence. She spent a night in jail and almost lost custody of Emma. But at the custody hearing, the girl uttered a simple and definitive phrase. The school uncle said that if I told everything, Mommy would disappear. That statement made headlines. The case exploded. Judge Coleman, who seemed biased against Sarah, was removed from the case. A new judge, Jeffrey Dawson, younger, more neutral, allowed Emma's drawing notebooks to be included as evidence. It wasn't much, but it was something. After the hearing, Sarah hurried Emma through the courthouse corridors, dodging reporters and cameras. "Ms. Taylor, can you comment on your accusations against Dr. Harmon?" a reporter shouted. "Is it true that Millionaire Learning Center conducts psychological experiments on children?" Another called out. Sarah pulled Emma closer, shielding her from the chaos. Outside, Olivia Reed waited in her car, ready to whisk them to safety. "You did great in there," Sarah whispered to Emma as they slid into the back seat. Emma looked up. At her mother, her blue eyes filled with a wisdom beyond her years. "Will they believe me now, Mommy?" Sarah's throat tightened. "I believe you, sweetheart. And now others are starting to believe too." As Olivia drove away from the courthouse, Sarah caught sight of Dr. Harmon emerging from the building, surrounded by a team of expensive-looking lawyers. For a brief moment, their eyes met through the car window. His expression remained neutral, but something in his gaze made Sarah's blood run cold. "Where to?" Olivia asked, breaking Sarah's trance. "Somewhere safe," Sarah replied, stroking Emma's hair as the little girl leaned against her. "Somewhere they can't find us." Olivia nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. "I've arranged a meeting with Dr. Melissa Chen. She's a neuroscientist specializing in children's memories. If anyone can help interpret Emma's drawing scientifically, it's her." Sarah nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. They were no longer alone in this fight, but as Boston's skyline receded in the rearview mirror, she couldn't shake the feeling that their journey had only just begun, and the hardest battles still lay ahead. "They won't stop, will they?" Sarah asked quietly, making sure Emma couldn't hear. Olivia's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "No. What you've stumbled upon is bigger than just one school or one man. But neither will we." Dr. Melissa Chen's office at MIT was a stark contrast to the opulence of the Millionaire Learning Center. While Dr. Harmon's institution boasted marble floors and interactive holographic displays, Melissa's workspace was practical and understated. Walls lined with academic journals, neural imaging charts, and children's drawings from previous studies. "These are extraordinary," Melissa said, carefully examining Emma's sketchbook under a specialized light. "The recurring patterns here aren't random. See these circular symbols with the intersecting lines? They appear in 17 different drawings, always in the background." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes tired from sleepless nights. "What do they mean?" "I can't say for certain," Melissa replied, placing a magnifying glass over one particularly detailed drawing. "But children this age typically don't create consistent symbolic systems unless they're reproducing something they've seen, repeatedly." Emma sat in an adjacent room working with Melissa's assistant on standard cognitive assessments. Through the observation window, Sarah watched her daughter concentrate on arranging colored blocks into patterns, looking so normal, so ordinary. It was hard to reconcile this image with the nightmares that made Emma scream in the middle of the night. "I've analyzed hundreds of children's drawings in trauma studies," Melissa continued, "and what strikes me about Emma's work is the precision. Look at this sequence. She laid out 5 drawings in chronological order. There's a narrative here. She's trying to tell a story she doesn't have words for. Olivia, who had been quietly taking notes, spoke up. Could these be induced memories? Something implanted rather than experienced? Melissa shook her head. Children's fabricated or suggested memories typically lack this level of consistent detail. These drawings show procedural memory, the kind formed through repeated exposure or practice. Sarah's mind flashed back to the 6 months before she noticed changes in Emma. The special enrichment sessions that selected children were invited to attend. The way Dr. Harmon would personally escort Emma and 4 other children to the east wing of the building, an area administrative staff weren't permitted to enter. There was a room, Sarah said slowly, the memories crystallizing. They called it the butterfly room. Emma mentioned it once, said it was where they learned to fly with their minds. I thought it was just a cute name for imagination exercises. Melissa's expression darkened. Several of these drawings include butterfly motifs, but they're not the typical cheerful butterflies children usually draw. The wings are segmented, almost like circuit boards. The door opened and Melissa's assistant entered with Emma. The little girl looked tired but immediately brightened at the sight of her mother. "Mommy, I got all the patterns right," Emma announced proudly. Sarah embraced her daughter, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." As Emma settled into a corner with some coloring books, the adults moved to Melissa's small conference room next door, leaving the door open to keep Emma in sight. "Her cognitive scores are off the charts," Melissa's assistant reported, handing over a tablet with the results. Especially pattern recognition and associative memory, she's scoring in the 99.8th percentile. "Is that unusual?" Olivia asked. "It's exceptional," Melissa replied, "but what's truly unusual is the discrepancy between different cognitive domains. It's almost as if specific neural pathways have been enhanced while others remain age-typical." Sarah felt a chill. "Enhanced? What does that mean?" "I can't make any definitive claims without brain imaging studies," Melissa cautioned, "but these results are consistent with targeted cognitive training programs or certain experimental protocols that focus on developing specific mental abilities." A heavy silence fell over the room. Sarah thought about Dr. Harmon's frequent presentations to wealthy donors about unlocking human potential and accelerated cognitive development. The phrases had seemed like typical educational jargon at the time. "There's something else," Melissa said, pulling out one particular drawing from Emma's collection. "This appears repeatedly. Do you recognize it?" The image showed a circular room with children sitting in reclining chairs, arranged in a semicircle. At the center was a tall figure, in what looked like a lab coat, holding something that emitted wavy lines toward the children. Sarah shook her head. "I've never seen this room, but..." She pointed to small details in the drawing. A butterfly, logo on the wall, a distinctive lamp shape. "These elements are consistent with Luminary's design aesthetic. We need to get inside that east wing," Olivia stated firmly. "Impossible," Sarah replied. "Security is tight, and I've been explicitly banned from the premises since my termination." Olivia smiled, a determined glint in her eye. "I didn't spend 15 years as an investigative journalist without learning a few tricks. Plus, I have a contact. The night security guard is the brother of a source I protected years ago. He owes me a favor." "It's too dangerous," Sarah protested. "What if you're caught?" "Sometimes you need to break a few rules to protect the innocent," Olivia replied, her voice softening as she glanced at Emma. "Besides, we need concrete evidence if we're going to face someone as powerful as Richard Harmon." Later that evening, in the small 2-bedroom apartment Olivia had helped them secure, Sarah tucked Emma into bed. The safe house wasn't much, but it was secure, paid for in cash through a network of Olivia's trusted contacts. "Mommy, when can we go home?" Emma asked, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair. "Not yet, sweetheart. We're having an adventure, remember? Like in your books about the spy girl." Emma's expression grew serious. "Is Dr. Richard still looking?" "For us, sir." Sarah tried to hide her surprise at the formal way Emma referred to Harmon. The children had always been instructed to call him Dr. Richard, rather than Dr. Harmon, a detail Sarah had found oddly informal for such a prestigious institution. "You don't need to worry about him," Sarah assured her, though the words felt hollow. "He said our brains are special," Emma whispered. "He said we're going to help make the world better, because we can see things other people can't." "What things, Emma?" Sarah asked gently. "Patterns, connections." Emma's eyes grew heavy with sleep. "He showed us pictures that moved and changed, said we were learning to control our butterfly powers." Sarah waited until Emma's breathing grew deep and regular before slipping out of the room. In the small kitchen, she found Olivia preparing for her mission, laying out a maintenance uniform she'd somehow procured. "She's talking more about it," Sarah said, her voice low. "Something about butterfly powers and seeing patterns others can't." Olivia looked up from her preparations. "That matches what our whistleblower mentioned about cognitive enhancement protocols. Before he had his accident, he sent me fragmented files about something called Project Chrysalis." "Chrysalis," Sarah repeated. "The butterfly connection again." "Exactly. From what I could piece together, Harmon believes certain children have latent abilities that can be amplified through specific stimuli. The document mentioned guided neuroplasticity and selective pathway enhancement." Sarah poured herself a cup of cold coffee. "It sounds like science fiction." "5 years ago, I would have agreed," Olivia replied. "But the boundaries between education, neuroscience, and technology are blurring. Companies are already developing brain-computer interfaces for the commercial market. What if Harmon found a way to accelerate that development using traditional conditioning methods combined with cutting-edge technology?" "But why? What's the endgame?" Olivia zipped up the backpack containing her camera equipment. "That's what I intend to find out tonight." As Olivia prepared to leave, Sarah grabbed her arm. "Be careful, these people, they're not what they seem." Olivia nodded grimly. "Neither am I." After Olivia left, Sarah sat in the silent apartment, listening to Emma's occasional murmurs in her sleep. She pulled out her phone and opened a secure messaging app that Olivia had installed. There was a new message from Marcus Winters, their attorney. "Judge Dawson approved the emergency hearing for Thursday. Dr. Harmon will be required to testify under oath. The court has also ordered full disclosure of Luminary's educational protocols for review. This is a major victory, Sarah. Hold tight." Sarah should have felt relieved, but instead, a sense of dread washed over her. She had worked at Luminary long enough to know that Richard Harmon's influence extended into every corner of Boston's elite circles, including the judicial system. If they were going to win this fight, they needed irrefutable evidence. Evidence that Olivia was risking everything to obtain tonight. Across town, in his penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor, Richard Harmon ended a phone call and turned to the nervous man sitting across from him. "We have a problem, Jake," he said smoothly to Emma's father. "Your ex-wife is proving to be far more resourceful than anticipated." The Luminary Learning Center looked different at night. Without the bustling activity of children and staff, the award-winning architecture took on an eerie quality, all sleek, lines and shadows, illuminated only by security lighting and the glow of Boston's skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Olivia Reed adjusted her maintenance uniform and badge as she pushed her cleaning cart down the empty corridor. The fake credentials had worked at the service entrance, the drowsy security guard barely glancing at her ID before waving her through. Now came the tricky part, accessing the restricted East Wing without triggering any alarms. According to the building schematics she'd obtained, the East Wing had its own separate security system, but her inside contact, the night guard who owed her a favor, had provided a crucial piece of information. Every Tuesday at 2:15 a.m., the system underwent a 3-minute diagnostic reset. Those 3 minutes were her window. As she approached the unmarked door leading to the East Wing, Olivia checked her watch. 2:13 a.m. She positioned her cart against the wall and pretended to mop, keeping one eye on the small security camera overhead. Right on schedule, the tiny red light on the camera blinked out. Olivia moved quickly, sliding a specialized key card into the reader. The lock clicked open and she slipped inside, careful to leave the door slightly ajar for her exit. The East Wing was nothing like the warm, inviting spaces of the main center. Here the walls were stark white, the lighting clinical. Olivia moved silently down the corridor, using her phone to document everything. The first few rooms seemed innocent enough. Storage spaces, a small laboratory with standard educational, testing equipment, an observation room with one-way glass. Then she found it. At the end of the hall, a circular room exactly matching Emma's drawings. 6 reclining chairs arranged in a semicircle facing a central platform, the butterfly logo prominently displayed on the wall. Olivia's heart raced as she photographed every detail, careful not to disturb anything. A control panel near the door caught her attention. She examined it closely, finding labeled switches, immersion sequence, neural calibration, pattern recognition matrix. Technical terms that meant little to her, but suggested something far beyond standard educational practices. In a locked cabinet, which her specialized tools quickly opened, she discovered dozens of tablets, each labeled with a child's initials. Finding ET for Emma Taylor, she powered it on. The screen prompted for a password. Olivia tried several combinations before, remembering a detail from Sarah's files, Emma's student ID number. It worked. The tablet contained hundreds of recorded sessions, each meticulously documented. Olivia downloaded the files to her secure drive, her hands shaking slightly as preview. Images flashed across the screen, strange patterns, pulsing lights, sequences that seemed designed to induce specific neural responses. A noise in the hallway froze her in place. Footsteps. Someone was coming. Olivia quickly returned the tablet, closed the cabinet and looked for somewhere to hide. The only option was behind a large piece of equipment in the corner. She squeezed into the space just as the door opened. 2 men entered, one in a security uniform, the other in an expensive suit despite the late hour. With a shock, Olivia recognized the second man as Jake Taylor, Emma's father. "This is where they conduct the primary sessions," the security guard was explaining. "Dr. Harmon insisted I show you the facility since you're now part of the program's expansion team." Jake looked around uneasily. "And this is legal, these treatments?" The guard chuckled. "They're not treatments, Mr. Taylor. They're advanced educational methodologies. Everything is covered under the parental consent forms. Speaking of which, have you made any progress convincing your ex-wife to drop her allegations?" Jake ran a hand through his hair. "I'm trying, but Sarah's always been stubborn. She doesn't understand what's at stake here. Dr. Harmon is counting on you. Remember, once you have full custody of Emma, her participation in Phase 2 can continue, without interruption. The financial arrangements we discussed will remain in place, plus the additional compensation for your cooperation." Jake's expression hardened. "I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing it because Richard convinced me it's best for Emma, that she's special." "Of course," the guard replied, unconvinced. "All of our chrysalis children are special. That's why. They were selected in the first place." They continued their tour, moving to an adjacent room. As soon as they left, Olivia emerged from her hiding place, her mind racing. Jake was involved, possibly being paid to seek custody. This was bigger than she'd imagined. She had 5 minutes before her window of opportunity closed. Moving quickly, she documented everything she could before slipping back out the way she came. Back at the safe house, Sarah paced anxiously. Olivia should have returned hours ago. Just as she was considering calling their emergency contact, the door opened and Olivia rushed in, her face flushed with excitement and fear. "I got it," she announced breathlessly. "Everything. And Sarah, you're not going to believe what I found." As Emma slept in the next room, Olivia connected her secure drive to a laptop and showed Sarah the evidence she'd gathered. The circular room, the strange equipment, the files from Emma's tablet showing the sessions she'd participated in. "They call it guided neuroplasticity," Olivia explained. "From what I can gather, they're using specialized visual and auditory stimuli to enhance specific cognitive functions in children who already show high aptitude. Pattern recognition, predictive modeling, intuitive problem solving." Sarah stared at the screen, watching a session recording where children, including Emma, sat in the reclining chairs wearing specialized headsets while pulsing patterns played on the surrounding screens. "Is this hurting them?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," Olivia admitted. "The files don't indicate any physical harm, but the psychological implications are unclear. They're essentially rewiring these children's neural pathways. And there's more." She hesitated. "Jake is involved. I overheard him talking with security about getting custody of Emma so she can participate in Phase 2 of something called Project Chrysalis." Sarah's legs weakened and she sank into a chair. Jake barely showed interest in Emma for years. Now it all makes sense. The sudden custody filing, the aggressive legal tactics. "There's something else you should see," Olivia said, pulling up another file. "This appears to be a presentation Dr. Harmon gave to potential investors." The video showed Richard Harmon standing confidently before a room of well-dressed individuals. "Imagine," he was saying, "a generation of children whose cognitive abilities have been optimized beyond what we currently consider exceptional. Children who can process information, recognize patterns, and make intuitive leaps that even our most advanced AI systems cannot match. This isn't science fiction. It's happening right now at Luminary." The presentation continued, showing anonymized data from the enhanced cohort compared to control groups. The differences were startling. Test scores, problem-solving abilities, predictive accuracy, all exponentially higher in the children who had undergone the Chrysalis protocols. "What is he trying to create?" Sarah whispered. "I think he genuinely believes he's advancing human potential," Olivia replied. "But he's crossing ethical and likely legal boundaries to do it. And based on what I found, Luminary is just the beta test. They're planning to expand nationally through partnerships with elite private schools." Sarah thought of Emma's nightmares, her drawings, the haunted look that sometimes passed over her face. "Whatever his intentions, he's harming children. My child." A small voice came from the doorway. "Mommy!" Both women turned to see Emma standing there in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. How long had she been listening? "Emma, sweetie." "You should be in bed," Sarah said, quickly closing the laptop. Emma's eyes were wide and serious. "I saw Dr. Richard on your computer. Is he coming to take me back to the butterfly room?" Sarah knelt down to Emma's level. "No, sweetheart. You don't ever have to go back there if you don't want to." "But he said I have to finish my training. That my brain is special and needs to grow the right way." Emma's voice trembled. "He said if I don't finish, all the butterflies in my head will get stuck and never come out." Sarah and Olivia exchanged alarmed glances. "Emma," Olivia asked gently, "what happens in the butterfly room? Can you tell us?" Emma looked down at her feet. "We wear the special crowns that feel tingly. Then we watch the moving pictures and listen to the special sounds. We have to find the hidden patterns and remember them. If we do good, our butterfly score goes up. If we do really good, Dr. Richard says we can move to level 2. "And what's level 2? Sarah prompted. "That's where we learn to make the butterflies fly out of our heads and change things with our thoughts." Emma looked up, her expression suddenly anxious. "Dr. Richard said, I'm almost ready for level 2. He said I'm one of the best butterfly children he's ever had." Sarah pulled Emma into a tight hug, struggling to control her emotions. Over her daughter's head, she met Olivia's gaze. "We're taking this to the hearing. All of it." Olivia nodded. "With this evidence, Judge Dawson will have no choice but to issue an injunction against Luminary and launch a full investigation." As Sarah tucked Emma back into bed, assuring her that everything would be okay, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were still missing something crucial. Richard Harmon was too intelligent, too calculated to risk everything on an educational experiment, no matter how revolutionary. There had to be more to Project Chrysalis than what they'd discovered. Across town, Richard Harmon received a security alert on his phone. The East Wing had been breached. Reviewing the footage, he saw a maintenance worker who didn't match any employee records. The image was grainy, but he recognized Olivia Reed. With calm precision, he made a phone call. "We have a situation. Implement Protocol Omega immediately and contact Mr. Taylor. We need to accelerate our timeline." As he ended the call, Harmon turned to the wall of his home office, where dozens of children's drawings were carefully arranged. Intricate patterns, complex symbols, and mathematical sequences that no ordinary child could conceive. Above them all was a framed motto: "The future belongs to those who shape it." The morning of the hearing arrived with an unexpected media frenzy. As Sarah, Marcus, and Olivia approached the courthouse, they were met by a swarm of reporters and camera crews. "Ms. Taylor, is it true you're accusing Luminary Learning Center of conducting unethical experiments on children? Do you stand by your claims that Dr. Harmon is manipulating children's cognitive development?" Marcus pushed through, the crowd creating a protective barrier around Sarah. "My client will not be making any statements at this time. All evidence will be presented in court." Inside, the courtroom was packed. Sarah had expected a small procedural hearing, but instead found every seat filled. Journalists, educators, and curious members of the public drawn by the sensational headlines that had somehow leaked overnight. In the front row sat Dr. Melissa Chen, who gave Sarah a reassuring nod. What unsettled Sarah most was the collection of well-dressed individuals on Harmon's side of the courtroom. She recognized several school board members, 2 state senators, and the dean of education from a prestigious local university. Richard Harmon had arrived with his power base intact. Emma had been left in the care of Olivia's trusted colleague, a former police officer who now worked in private security. After the revelations of the previous night, Sarah wasn't taking any chances with her daughter's safety. Judge Jeffrey Dawson entered, and the room rose. Unlike Judge Coleman, Dawson was younger and had a reputation for fairness and thoroughness. As he settled behind the bench, his expression revealed nothing about his predispositions. "Before we begin," Judge Dawson announced, "I want to clarify that while this started as a custody, hearing the serious allegations against Luminary Learning Center and Dr. Richard Harmon have necessitated this special evidentiary hearing. Both sides will present their evidence, after which I will determine if there are grounds for further legal action and how this affects the custody arrangement between Ms. Taylor and Mr. Taylor." He nodded toward Jake, who sat beside his attorney, avoiding Sarah's gaze. Marcus Winters rose first. "Your Honor, we have compiled substantial evidence that Luminary Learning Center, under Dr. Harmon's direction, has been conducting unauthorized cognitive manipulation procedures on selected children, including Emma Taylor." He approached the bench with a file. "These are Emma Taylor's drawings, analyzed by Dr. Melissa Chen, a neuroscientist specializing in children's memory and cognition." As Marcus laid out their case, presenting Emma's drawings, Dr. Chen's analysis, and the documentation Olivia had obtained from the East Wing, Sarah watched Richard Harmon. He sat calmly, occasionally whispering to his attorney, his expression betraying nothing. His composure unnerved her. When Marcus played the video of Harmon's investor presentation, a murmur rippled through the courtroom. Harmon's own words echoed clearly. "Cognitive ability is optimized beyond what we currently consider exceptional." "Your Honor," Marcus concluded, "the evidence shows that Dr. Harmon has violated numerous educational regulations and ethical standards. We request an immediate injunction against Luminary Learning Center and a full investigation into Project Chrysalis." Judge Dawson turned to Harmon's attorney, Elizabeth Blackwell, a formidable litigator known for representing powerful clients. "Ms. Blackwell, your response?" Elizabeth rose smoothly. "Your Honor, my client welcomes this opportunity to clear his name. The accusations against Dr. Harmon and Luminary are not only false, but represent a fundamental misunderstanding of our educational approach." She gestured, and an assistant wheeled in a display board. "Luminary Learning Center operates at the forefront of educational neuroscience. Yes, we use advanced technology to enhance learning, as do many progressive institutions, but there is nothing nefarious about our methods." Elizabeth displayed a series of parental consent forms. Every parent, including Ms. Taylor, signed comprehensive agreements acknowledging our innovative techniques. She then turned to the court. "What we're seeing here is not a case of unethical practices, but rather a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge after being terminated for performance issues." Sarah stiffened. This was a lie. She had received excellent performance reviews until she began questioning Harmon. Elizabeth continued, "As for the dramatic claims about Project Chrysalis, this is simply the code name for our accelerated learning program for gifted students. The butterfly metaphor represents transformation through knowledge, a concept any educator would recognize." She then called her first witness, Dr. Alan Morrison, the Dean of Education Sarah had noticed earlier. Dr. Morrison spoke glowingly about Luminary's contributions to educational research and innovation. "What Richard Harmon has created is revolutionary, yes, but entirely within ethical boundaries. The results speak for themselves. Luminary graduates demonstrate exceptional academic performance and emotional intelligence." Next came a parade of parents whose children had gone through Luminary's programs. Each testified to remarkable improvements in their children's abilities without any negative side effects. Sarah recognized some of them as Boston's elite, executives, physicians, and political figures who would benefit from association with Luminary's prestige. "And now," Elizabeth said, "I'd like to call Jacob Taylor to the stand." Jake walked to the witness box, still avoiding Sarah's eyes. After being sworn in, he began to speak, his voice steady but hollow. "I was initially concerned when Sarah first made these allegations. As Emma's father, her well-being is my priority." He paused. "So I investigated personally. I toured the facility, reviewed the educational materials, and spoke with other parents. What I found was not some sinister experiment, but an extraordinary educational opportunity that Emma was fortunate to experience." Marcus stood. "Your Honor, may I cross-examine the witness?" "Proceed," Judge Dawson replied. "Mr. Taylor, before your sudden interest in Emma's education, when was the last time you attended a parent-teacher conference?" Jake shifted uncomfortably. "I travel frequently for work." "That doesn't answer my question. When was the last time?" "I don't recall exactly." "Let me help you," Marcus said. "According to Luminary's records, you have never attended a parent-teacher conference, never participated in a family day event, and prior to 3 months ago, had only visited the school once, at the initial enrollment which you left halfway through." Jake's face flushed. "My work schedule?" "Yet suddenly," Marcus interrupted, "you found time not only to become involved, but to file for full custody. Can you explain the timing of this newfound parental interest?" Before Jake could answer, Elizabeth objected. "Your Honor, counsel is badgering the witness and implying improper motives without foundation. I'm simply establishing the witness's credibility and potential motivations," Marcus countered. Judge Dawson considered. "I'll allow it, but tread carefully, Mr. Winters." Marcus turned back to Jake. "Mr. Taylor, have you received any financial compensation or other benefits from Dr. Harmon or Luminary Learning Center?" Jake's face paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." Marcus approached with a document. "This is a bank statement showing a transfer of $50,000 from a shell corporation linked to Luminary's parent company into your personal account. The transfer occurred 1 day before you filed for custody. How do you explain this?" The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Elizabeth was on her feet immediately. "Objection! This document was not disclosed during discovery." "Because we only obtained it last night," Marcus replied, "after Ms. Reed's investigation revealed Mr. Taylor's involvement." Judge Dawson examined the document. "I'll allow it pending verification. The witness will answer." Jake looked desperately toward Harmon, who remained impassive. "It was a consulting fee. I advised on their international expansion." "Really?" Marcus pressed. "What are your qualifications in education or international business?" "Objection!" Elizabeth called again. "Relevance." "Sustained," Judge Dawson ruled. "Move on, Mr. Winters." Marcus changed tack. "Mr. Taylor, were you aware of a room in Luminary called the Butterfly Room?" Jake hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. "I may have heard it mentioned. Did you visit this room last night in the company of a security guard?" Jake's shock was evident. "How did you— please answer the question." "Yes, I was given a tour of the facilities. And during this tour, was there discussion about Emma's participation in Phase 2 of Project Chrysalis once you obtained custody?" The courtroom fell silent. Jake looked trapped. There may have been some mention of advanced programs available to Emma. "Mr. Taylor," Marcus said quietly, "are you willing to sacrifice your daughter's well-being for financial gain?" "Objection," Elizabeth shouted. "Inflammatory and assumes facts not in evidence." "Sustained," Judge Dawson ruled firmly. "Mr. Winters, that's enough." As Jake stepped down, visibly shaken, Elizabeth called her final witness, Dr. Richard Harmon, himself. Harmon took the stand with the confidence of a man accustomed to authority. After being sworn in, he addressed the court directly, his voice measured and reasonable. "Your Honor, I've dedicated my life to advancing educational opportunities for gifted children. What we're doing at Luminary is preparing the next generation for a world that will demand cognitive abilities we can scarcely imagine today." He looked at Sarah with what appeared to be genuine sympathy. "I understand Ms. Taylor's concerns. As parents, we all want to protect our children from what we don't understand." He turned to Judge Dawson. "But what's happening here is a misinterpretation of our methods. Yes, we use advanced biofeedback, visual stimulation, and cognitive enhancement techniques. These are documented in all our materials and consent forms. There are no secrets, no hidden agendas, just education at the cutting edge of neuroscience." Marcus rose for cross-examination. "Dr. Harmon, in your investor presentation, you referred to optimizing cognitive abilities beyond what we currently consider exceptional. What exactly did you mean by that?" Harmon smiled. "I meant precisely what educators have always sought, to help children reach their full potential. Our methods are simply more effective, backed by the latest research in neuroplasticity." "And the restricted East Wing? The specialized equipment? The files Ms. Reed discovered showing neural pathway manipulation?" "Advanced educational tools," Harmon replied smoothly. "Ms. Reed illegally trespassed on private property and misinterpreted what she saw. Had she asked for an official tour, we would have gladly explained everything." The cross-examination continued, with Harmon providing reasonable explanations for every accusation. His answers were polished, thoughtful, and seemingly transparent. To anyone who didn't know better, he appeared to be an innovative educator being persecuted for pushing boundaries. As the testimony concluded, Judge Dawson called a recess before final arguments. In the courthouse corridor, Sarah found herself face to face with Richard Harmon. "Sarah," he said quietly, "this doesn't have to be adversarial. You were a valued member of our team. You could be again." Sarah stared at him. "After everything you've done to Emma, to the other children?" "What I've done is give them opportunities beyond what ordinary education provides. Emma has extraordinary potential. Surely you've seen that. Don't deny her the chance to develop it fully. By rewiring her brain, by giving her nightmares, by separating her from her mother." Harmon's expression hardened slightly. "Progress requires sacrifice. History will remember what we've accomplished, Sarah. Be on the right side of it." Before she could respond, Marcus appeared at her side. "Sarah, we need to discuss our closing strategy." As Harmon walked away, Sarah noticed something that chilled her. Several of the reporters who had been clamoring for statements earlier were now speaking with Harmon's associates, nodding agreeably. The narrative was being shaped before her eyes. Olivia approached, her expression grim. "We have a problem. Someone leaked selective parts of Emma's psychological evaluation, the parts showing her advanced abilities, but none of the trauma indicators. The afternoon news cycle is already running with revolutionary educational method creates child prodigies." Sarah felt the ground shifting beneath her. Despite all their evidence, Harmon was controlling the story. As they re-entered the courtroom for final arguments, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were fighting not just one man, but an entire system designed to protect innovation at any cost, even if that cost was measured in children's well-being. The afternoon session began with closing arguments. Marcus Winters presented a compelling summary of their evidence: Emma's drawings, Dr. Chen's expert analysis, Olivia's documentation of the East Wing, and the suspicious financial transactions with Jake Taylor. His argument was methodical, fact-based, and powerful. Your Honor, he concluded, the evidence clearly shows that Luminary Learning Center under Dr. Harmon's direction has crossed ethical boundaries in their treatment of children. We ask for an immediate injunction against their cognitive enhancement practices and a full investigation into Project Chrysalis. Elizabeth Blackwell countered with equal eloquence, painting Richard Harmon as a visionary educator being persecuted for innovation. She dismissed their evidence as circumstantial and misinterpreted, characterized Olivia's investigation as illegal trespassing, and portrayed Sarah as an emotionally distraught mother unable to understand advanced educational concepts. What we have here, Elizabeth stated firmly, is not misconduct but misunderstanding. Dr. Harmon's methods may be revolutionary, but they are fully disclosed to parents and comply with all regulations. The remarkable results speak for themselves. As the arguments concluded, Judge Dawson reviewed his notes thoughtfully. This is a complex case with significant implications. Before I make my ruling, there's one voice we haven't heard, perhaps the most important one. He looked directly at Sarah. Ms. Taylor, is your daughter Emma present in the courthouse today? Sarah tensed. No, Your Honor. Given the sensitive nature of these proceedings, we arranged for her to stay with a trusted guardian. Judge Dawson nodded. I understand your concern. However, given Emma's central role in this matter, I believe it would be beneficial to hear directly from her in a controlled environment. He turned to his clerk. Please arrange for my chambers to be prepared for a private interview with the child, with only essential personnel present. Elizabeth immediately objected. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The child has likely been influenced by her mother's perceptions. On the contrary, Judge Dawson replied, children often provide the clearest perspective in cases like this. Miss Taylor, would you be willing to bring Emma here this afternoon? Sarah exchanged glances with Marcus, who gave a subtle nod. Yes, Your Honor. We can arrange that. Excellent. We'll reconvene in my chambers at 3 p.m. Court is in recess. Until then. As the courtroom emptied, Olivia pulled Sarah and Marcus aside. This could be our turning point. Emma's testimony might cut through all of Harmon's polished explanations. Marcus looked concerned. It's also a risk. Emma is 7 years old, facing intense pressure. We need to ensure she's comfortable speaking her truth without feeling overwhelmed. She'll have me there, Sarah said firmly. And Emma has been braver through all of this than any of us. While Olivia went to retrieve Emma, Sarah and Marcus prepared for the afternoon session. As they worked, Sarah noticed a text message from an unknown number. Parking garage, level B, 15 minutes. Come alone. Information about Chrysalis phase. 2. Sarah showed Marcus. It could be a trap, he warned. Or it could be another whistleblower, Sarah countered. We need all the help we can get. At least let me come with you. They said alone. I'll stay in public view and keep my phone ready to call for help. Against Marcus's better judgment, Sarah made her way to the courthouse parking garage. Level B was nearly empty at midday, the concrete space eerily quiet except for the distant sounds of traffic. Sarah kept her hand on her phone, ready to dial emergency services. Ms. Taylor. Sarah turned to see a woman emerging from behind a concrete pillar. She recognized her immediately. Catherine Nichols, Luminary's former director of curriculum development, who had left the institution 6 months earlier. Dr. Nichols, you sent the message. Catherine nodded, glancing nervously around the garage. I don't have much time, they're watching me. But I couldn't stay silent anymore, not after seeing the news about your case. What do you know about Project Chrysalis? Everything. I helped design the initial protocols before I understood what Richard was really doing. Catherine pulled out a small flash drive. This contains the complete Phase 2 documentation that Richard has kept hidden from everyone except his inner circle. Even the board of directors hasn't seen this. Sarah accepted the drive. What's on it? Catherine's expression darkened. The truth about why Richard is so interested in these children. Phase 1, what you've already discovered, is just preparation. Phase 2 involves using the enhanced cognitive abilities they've developed for something much bigger. What? Predictive analytics. Richard believes that properly conditioned young minds can process information patterns in ways that even the most advanced AI systems cannot. He's training these children to predict market trends, political outcomes, even behavioral patterns of target populations. Sarah felt a chill. He's turning children into human forecasting tools? Exactly. And Emma? Emma is special even among the chrysalis children. Her pattern recognition abilities tested off the charts. Richard has investors from tech companies, financial institutions, and government contractors all waiting to access what he calls intuitive predictive intelligence. These children would essentially become living algorithmic systems, constantly processing data streams to generate predictions that could be worth billions. That's, Sarah struggled to find words, exploitation of the highest order, Catherine finished. And the conditioning they undergo changes their neural pathways permanently. That's why the children have nightmares, why they draw those symbols compulsively. Their brains are being rewired to process information differently. A sound echoed through the garage, footsteps approaching. Catherine stiffened. I have to go. Use that information. Save those children. She hurried away, disappearing behind a row of cars. Sarah clutched the flash drive, her mind reeling. This went far beyond educational innovation. It was about creating human predictive systems using children's developing brains. She hurried back to meet Marcus, showing him the drive and explaining what Catherine had revealed. This changes everything, Marcus said, if we can verify this information before the chambers session. They worked quickly, reviewing the files on the drive. The documentation was comprehensive. Detailed protocols for Phase 2, predictive accuracy measurements, investor presentations outlining expected returns, and most damning of all, brain scans showing the neural changes in the chrysalis children compared to control groups. At precisely 3 p.m., they gathered in Judge Dawson's chambers. The space was arranged informally, with comfortable chairs in a semicircle, rather than the imposing structure of the courtroom. Present were Judge Dawson, Sarah, Marcus, Olivia, Emma, Elizabeth Blackwell, Richard Harmon, and a court-appointed child psychologist to ensure Emma's well-being during questioning. Emma sat beside Sarah, small but composed in her blue dress, her blonde hair neatly braided. Judge Dawson spoke to her gently. "Hello, Emma. Do you know why you're here today?" Emma nodded. "To tell the truth about Dr. Richard and the butterfly room." "That's right. And do you understand what telling the truth means?" "It means saying what really happened, even if it's hard or scary." Judge Dawson smiled warmly. "That's exactly right. Now, can you tell me about the butterfly room? What happened there?" Emma glanced briefly at Dr. Harmon, then back to the judge. "It's a special room where only some kids go. We wear special headsets that feel tingly on our heads. Then we watch patterns on the big screens that go all around us. And what do you do with these patterns? We have to find the hidden things inside. Them. Sometimes numbers, sometimes shapes, sometimes predictions." "Predictions?" Judge Dawson prompted. "What kind of predictions?" "Like which way the lines will go on the charts, or which words people will choose, or what will happen next in a story that hasn't finished yet." Emma's voice grew more confident as she spoke. "Dr. Richard said I'm really good at seeing what others can't see. He said my brain makes special connections." "And how did being in the butterfly room make you feel?" Emma hesitated. "Sometimes it was fun, like a game. But sometimes my head would hurt really bad. And I started having scary dreams where the patterns came alive and wouldn't stop moving, even when I closed my eyes." Sarah squeezed Emma's hand supportively. "Dr. Richard said that was normal," Emma continued. "He said it meant my butterfly powers were growing, but I didn't like how it felt." Judge Dawson nodded understandingly. "Emma, did Dr. Richard ever tell you not to talk about the butterfly room?" Emma nodded vigorously. "He said it was our special secret, that other people wouldn't understand our important work. And he said—" She paused, looking down at her hands. "It's okay, Emma. You can tell us," the judge encouraged. "He said if I told Mommy too much, she might try to stop my training. And then they would have to send her away so I could finish becoming a butterfly child." Emma's voice trembled. He said sometimes caterpillars try to stay caterpillars forever and they have to be removed from the chrysalis. The room fell silent. Judge Dawson looked at Richard Harmon, whose composed expression had finally cracked. "That's preposterous," Harmon interjected. "This is clearly a fabricated story." "Dr. Harmon, you'll have your chance to respond," Judge Dawson said firmly. "Emma, is there anything else you remember about the butterfly room or Dr. Richard that you want to tell me?" Emma looked directly at Harmon, her small face suddenly showing a strength beyond her years. "I remember everything, Dr. Richard. All the patterns, all the predictions, all the things you told us would happen if we didn't obey." She reached for her backpack and pulled out a drawing, handing it to the judge. "I drew this last night." The drawing showed the butterfly room in detail, but with something new, a series of equations and symbols along the borders that looked far too complex for a 7-year-old. "What are these markings, Emma?" Judge Dawson asked, studying the drawing. "That's the success formula. Dr. Richard showed it to us every day. He said once we could see the whole formula in our minds, we would be ready for phase 2. Richard Harmon stood abruptly. "This is absurd. The child is clearly repeating things she's heard from her mother and this so-called journalist." "Dr. Harmon, sit down," Judge Dawson ordered. Marcus seized the moment. "Your Honor, we have new evidence that corroborates Emma's testimony." He handed over the flash drive and a summary of its contents. "This documentation, provided by Dr. Catherine Nichols, former Director of Curriculum Development at Luminary, details the true purpose of Project Chrysalis, using neurologically conditioned children as predictive analytics tools for commercial and potentially governmental applications." As Judge Dawson reviewed the materials, Emma suddenly pointed at Richard Harmon, her voice clear and steady. "Mommy, it was him. He told me if I didn't become a perfect butterfly child, you would disappear." The chamber fell silent. The simple declaration from a child's lips carried more weight than hours of technical testimony. Judge Dawson looked from Emma to Harmon, his expression grave. "In light of this testimony and new evidence, I'm ordering an immediate temporary injunction against Luminary Learning Center's cognitive enhancement programs, pending a full investigation." He turned to Emma. "Thank you for your bravery, Emma. You can go with your mother now." As Sarah led Emma from the chambers, Richard Harmon's carefully constructed facade finally collapsed. His voice took on a desperate edge as he addressed the judge. "You don't understand what's at stake here. These children represent the next evolutionary step in human cognition. We're not harming them, we're liberating them from the limitations of conventional thought. Emma's abilities could revolutionize entire industries, save countless lives through predictive risk assessment." Judge Dawson's expression remained stern. "Dr. Harmon, you've lost sight of the fundamental principle of education, to nurture children, not exploit them. No potential advancement is worth the psychological distress these children are experiencing." Outside in the corridor, reporters had gathered, somehow alerted to the dramatic developments. As Sarah shielded Emma from the cameras, Olivia stepped forward. "We'll be releasing a full statement later. Now all we ask is respect for Emma's privacy." But as they moved toward the exit, Emma stopped and turned to face the crowd. With a clarity that silenced everyone, she spoke directly to the cameras. "The butterflies are supposed to be free, not trapped in little kids' heads." The image of Emma, small, brave, and wise beyond her years, captured the essence of the case in a way no legal argument could. As photos of her standing against the backdrop of the imposing courthouse spread across social media and news networks, public opinion began to shift dramatically. That evening, as Sarah tucked Emma into bed in their safe house, she couldn't help but wonder what the future held. The battle wasn't over. Richard Harmon had resources, influence, and powerful allies. But for the first time since discovering the truth about Luminary, Sarah felt hope. "Mommy," Emma whispered as she drifted towards sleep, "I can still see the patterns sometimes, but they don't scare me as much now." Sarah stroked her daughter's hair. "What do you see, sweetheart?" Emma's eyes fluttered closed. "I see us being okay. I can predict that." As Emma fell asleep, Sarah stepped into the living room, where Olivia and Marcus were reviewing media coverage of the day's events. The story had exploded, with major networks picking up not just the sensational aspects, but the serious ethical questions raised by Project Chrysalis. "We've hit a nerve," Olivia said, scrolling through her phone. "Parents across the country are questioning their children's schools about cognitive enhancement techniques. Educational oversight committees are calling for investigations. This is becoming much bigger than just Luminary." Marcus nodded. "The preliminary injunction is just the beginning. With the evidence from Dr. Nichols, we have grounds for a class action on behalf of all the Chrysalis children." Sarah sank onto the couch, the emotional weight of the day finally catching up with her. What about Richard and Jake? "Harmon's reputation is taking a hit, but don't underestimate him," Marcus warned. "As for Jake, he's gone silent. Probably hiding from both the media and Harmon's people." "And Emma?" Sarah asked softly. "What happens to her now, to her mind?" Olivia placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Dr. Chen has colleagues specializing in neuroplasticity. If the changes can be made, they can be addressed. Emma will need support, but she has you, and now she has an entire community behind her, too." As they spoke, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "This isn't over. Some butterflies are too valuable to set free. RH." Sarah showed the others, her momentary peace shattered. The threat was clear. Richard. Harmon wasn't giving up. Despite the day's victory, the battle for Emma's future and the futures of all the Chrysalis children was just beginning. 3 months had passed since the courthouse confrontation. The leaves in Boston Common had transformed from summer, green to autumn gold, a change that Emma pointed out to her mother as they walked hand in hand through the park. "Everything changes, Mummy. Dr. Melissa says that's good for brains, too." Sarah smiled. Dr. Melissa Chen had become an integral part of their lives, not just as Emma's neurological specialist, but as a friend and advocate. The neural recalibration sessions, designed to address the alterations from Luminary's procedures, were showing promising results. Emma's nightmares had decreased, and her compulsive drawing of patterns had evolved into a more typical artistic expression. They settled on a bench overlooking the pond, where ducks glided across the water's surface. Sarah unpacked their lunch, peanut butter sandwiches and apple slices, a normal mother-daughter picnic that once seemed impossibly out of reach. "Is Olivia joining us today?" Emma asked, carefully arranging her napkin on her lap. "Not today. Sweetheart, she's in Washington for the congressional hearings." The Luminary case had indeed grown far beyond one institution. After the initial media explosion, investigations had uncovered similar programs at elite schools across the country, though none as advanced as Harmon's Project Chrysalis. The revelations had prompted a congressional inquiry into educational, neurotechnology and the ethical boundaries of cognitive enhancement in children. Olivia had become the face of the movement, her journalistic career reborn through her dogged investigation and advocacy. Her series of articles titled "The Butterfly Effect Inside America's Child Mind Manipulation Programs" had won prestigious awards and brought national attention to the issue. Sarah's phone chimed with a news alert. She checked it quickly, then put the phone away. "What is it?" Emma asked, noticing her mother's expression. "Just news about Dr. Harmon," Sarah said carefully. They had agreed to be honest with Emma, within age-appropriate boundaries. "Is he in trouble again?" Sarah nodded. "Yes, more parents have come forward with their stories." The aftermath of the injunction had been swift and far-reaching. Luminary Learning Center had been placed under state supervision, its specialized programs suspended pending complete review. Several board members had resigned, distancing themselves from the scandal. But Richard Harmon had not gone quietly. DC. First, he had launched an aggressive counter-narrative, presenting himself as an educational innovator, being persecuted by fearful traditionalists. He gave interviews claiming that conventional minds cannot comprehend unconventional breakthroughs. For a brief time, he had even garnered support from certain tech industry leaders who championed disruption in all forms. But then came the financial investigations. The flash drive from Catherine Nichols had contained more than just program details. It included a labyrinth of offshore accounts, shell companies, and questionable investor arrangements. Richard Harmon hadn't just been developing enhanced children. He had been selling futures contracts on their predictive abilities, essentially treating them as human commodities. "Mommy," Emma said, interrupting Sarah's thoughts, "I saw Jake yesterday." Sarah stiffened. "Where?" "At Dr. Melissa's office. He was in the waiting room when we were leaving." Emma took a bite of her sandwich, seemingly unbothered. He looked sad. Jake's role in the aftermath had been complicated. After the hearing, he had disappeared for weeks, only to resurface with a public apology and a full confession about his arrangement with Harmon. He had returned the money and cooperated with investigators, painting himself as another victim of Harmon's manipulation. Sarah wasn't sure she believed his redemption story, but his testimony had provided valuable evidence. The custody case had been resolved, with Sarah retaining full legal custody, while Jake received limited supervised visitation rights, which, to Sarah's surprise, he had been faithfully attending. Dr. Melissa had suggested that including Jake in Emma's recovery process might be beneficial, provided it was carefully managed and monitored. "Was it okay seeing him?" Sarah asked carefully. Emma nodded. "He brought me a book about real butterflies. Did you know they can taste with their feet?" Sarah smiled despite herself. "I didn't know that." "Dr. Melissa says he's trying to understand what happened to me. She says sometimes people do wrong things because they believe the wrong stories." Out of the mouths of babes, Sarah thought. Emma's capacity for understanding and forgiveness continued to amaze her. As they finished their lunch, Sarah noticed a familiar figure approaching across the grass, Marcus Winters, who had transitioned from their attorney to heading the newly formed Children's Cognitive Rights Foundation, a non-profit established to advocate for regulatory oversight in educational neurotechnology. "Sorry I'm late," Marcus said, joining them on the bench. "The meeting with the State Education Board ran long." "How did it go?" Sarah asked. Marcus smiled. "Better than expected. They've adopted our proposed guidelines for neurotechnology in educational settings, no cognitive enhancement techniques, without peer-reviewed research, transparent protocols, and comprehensive parental disclosure." "Will that be enough?" Sarah wondered aloud. "It's a start," Marcus replied. "Change happens incrementally, but with the federal regulations likely to follow the congressional hearings, we're moving in the right direction." Emma, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. "The other butterfly children, are they getting better too?" Marcus turned to her with gentle seriousness. "Many of them are, Emma. Thanks in large part to you. Your bravery helped everyone understand what was happening." Emma considered this. "Dr. Melissa says our brains are plastic, not like toys, but like they can change and grow in different ways." "That's right," Marcus confirmed. "And the new programs are designed to help your brains develop naturally, without forcing specific patterns." Sarah checked her watch. "We should head back. Emma has art therapy at 4. The art therapy had been Dr. Chen's suggestion, a way for Emma to process her experiences while redirecting the pattern recognition abilities that had been enhanced at Luminary. Instead of being trained to predict market trends or behavioral outcomes, Emma was learning to channel her unique cognitive approach into creative expression. As they packed up their picnic, Emma suddenly froze, her gaze fixed on a man standing at the far end of the pond. Even at a distance, Sarah recognized Richard Harmon. "It's okay," Sarah assured Emma, pulling her close. "He can't come near us. Remember the protection order?" Harmon remained where he was, simply watching them. Despite the multiple investigations, the freezing of his assets, and his removal from Luminary's board, he had avoided jail time so far, navigating legal challenges with expensive attorneys and exploiting procedural loopholes. Marcus immediately called security, and within minutes, park police were escorting Harmon away. As he left, he turned once to look back at Emma, his expression unreadable from a distance. "Why does he still care about me?" Emma asked quietly as they walked toward the park exit. Sarah exchanged glances with Marcus. How to explain obsession to a 7-year-old? Sometimes, Marcus said carefully, when people believe they've discovered something important, they have trouble letting go of it, even when they learn it was wrong. Emma seemed to accept this explanation, but later that evening, as Sarah tucked her into bed, she returned to the subject. "Dr. Richard isn't going to stop, is he?" Emma asked, her voice small in the darkness of her bedroom. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "There are many people working to make sure he can't hurt you or any other children again, but he still thinks he's right." Sarah couldn't deny it. "Yes, he probably does." Emma was quiet for a moment. "I can still see some of the patterns he taught us. Not all the time, but sometimes when I'm almost asleep." She looked up at Sarah with solemn eyes. "I don't think they're bad, Mommy. The patterns, I mean. It's what he wanted to use them for that was bad." Sarah brushed a strand of hair from Emma's forehead. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Dr. Melissa says I notice connections that other people don't see. That's just how my brain works. But I get to choose what to do with what I see." The wisdom, in her daughter's words, struck Sarah deeply. The abilities Harmon had tried to exploit weren't inherently harmful. It was the exploitation itself, the disregard for the children's autonomy and well-being, that had been wrong. "You're right, Emma, and you'll always get to choose now." 6 months later, Sarah stood at the back of a crowded auditorium at Boston University, watching Emma on stage with 5 other former Chrysalis children. They were presenting their collaborative art project, an immersive installation that translated their unique perceptual abilities into a sensory experience for others. The project had been Dr. Chen's brainchild, a therapeutic approach that honored the children's enhanced pattern recognition while redirecting it toward creative expression rather than predictive analysis. The result was extraordinary, a room where light, sound, and movement combined in ways that revealed unexpected connections and emergent patterns. "It's remarkable," said Catherine Nichols, now a key witness in the ongoing federal case against Harmon and a consultant for the Children's Cognitive Rights Foundation. "They've transformed something that was done to them into something they're creating themselves." Sarah nodded, watching Emma guide visitors through the installation, explaining how certain elements represented the ways her mind processed information. Her daughter spoke with confidence and joy, so different from the frightened child who had pointed a trembling finger in a courtroom. The exhibition had drawn significant attention, not just from the art world, but from educators, neuroscientists, and policymakers interested in the ethical applications of cognitive science in education. Among the attendees was Congressman William Bennett, chair of the House Subcommittee on Educational Technology. "Ms. Taylor," he greeted Sarah after the presentation, "your daughter is extraordinary. All these children are." "Thank you," Sarah replied. "They've come a long way." "The legislation we're drafting owes much to your advocacy," Bennett continued. "The Cognitive Development Protection Act will ensure that what happened at Luminary can't be repeated elsewhere." The proposed legislation would establish strict guidelines for neurotechnology in educational settings, requiring transparent protocols, peer review, and comprehensive oversight. It wasn't perfect, no law could be, but it was a significant step toward protecting children's cognitive autonomy. After the exhibition, as they walked home through the crisp autumn evening, Emma skipped ahead, still energized from the successful presentation. "Mom," she called back, "can we go by the community garden? I want to check on my butterflies." The butterfly garden had been Emma's idea, a place to raise actual monarch butterflies and track their migration patterns. What had begun as a personal project had expanded into a community science initiative, with Emma teaching other children about butterfly life cycles and ecosystem interdependence. At the garden, Emma carefully examined the milkweed plants where caterpillars were feeding. "2 more chrysalises formed today," she reported excitedly. "And look, that one's about to emerge." They watched as a butterfly slowly pushed its way out of its chrysalis, wings crumpled and damp. With patient determination, it oriented itself upright and began the process of expanding its wings, pumping fluid through newly formed veins until they stretched to their full size, vibrant orange patterns gradually becoming visible. "It knows exactly what to do," Emma observed. "Nobody has to teach it." Sarah put an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "That's right, it has everything it needs inside all along." As the butterfly's wings dried and strengthened in the late afternoon sun, Emma looked up at her mother. "I've been thinking about something. When people ask me about what happened at Luminary, I don't want to just talk about the bad parts anymore. I want to talk about what we're doing now. The art project, the butterfly garden, the new rules to protect kids." Sarah felt a surge of pride. "That sounds like a wonderful approach." Emma nodded decisively. "The past is important, but the future is where we're going to live." She turned back to the emerging butterfly. "Look, Mum, it's ready to fly." Together they watched as the monarch tested its wings with gentle flutters before lifting off, soaring into the open sky, transformed, free, and following its own path. Forward. Later that evening, as news broke that Richard Harmon had finally been indicted on federal charges of fraud, exploitation, and violations of research ethics, Sarah found herself less focused on the man who had caused so much harm, and more appreciative of the unexpected gifts that had emerged from their ordeal. A strengthened bond with Emma, a powerful community of advocates, and a national conversation about the ethics of educational innovation. When Olivia called to share the news of Harmon's indictment, Sarah was helping Emma prepare for bed. "Justice is finally catching up to him," Olivia said. "The evidence is overwhelming." "Good," Sarah replied simply. "But you know what? He's becoming less important in our story." After ending the call, Sarah joined Emma in her bedroom. Her daughter had created a new drawing, not the compulsive pattern diagrams from before, but a colorful scene showing a garden filled with children and butterflies. "It's our future butterfly school," Emma explained, sleepily, "where kids can learn about their special abilities without anyone trying to control them." As Emma drifted off to sleep, Sarah sat beside her, contemplating the journey they had taken. From a terrified mother fighting a powerful system to protect her child, she had become part of a movement reshaping the boundaries between education, technology, and ethics. And Emma, once manipulated and exploited for her unique cognitive abilities, was now helping to create a world where such abilities would be nurtured with respect and care. Outside Emma's window, the Boston skyline glittered with lights, each one representing countless stories unfolding across the city. Sarah thought about all the other parents out there, watching over their children, trying to guide them safely through a rapidly changing world. Thanks to one little girl's courage to point a finger